up and running yet.
And it's recording?
Yeah, it's going to record, and we are live. And Betty, you got it.
Welcome, everyone. And thank you for accepting our invitation or our offer to share approximately an hour together, speaking in conversation about the air we breathe and the water we swim in together. And we call that language. So language equals action equals power. And language is the creative force in our lives, creating possibilities and constituting the world together through speech acts is what this evening or this hour will be about. Now, I must tell you.
I'm going to pause you for a minute, because let's give everybody a buffer of about five or even 10 minutes to kind of get on board, because it just started up and there may be a couple late stragglers. So why don't we give them just maybe 5 minutes, and you can welcome them, and just maybe vamp a little bit like you're talking to an audience before the beginning of a presentation.
Okay.
Yeah, so why don't you plan to start at about 8 after, and just let them know that you love them.
Okay. We are giving people a chance to get on the line. So we'll start in another 5 minutes or so. And in the meantime, take out your pen and your paper so you can take some notes. So I'm pretty sure you want to do that. And we'll take questions at the very end.
Betty, we have 36 people so far, so they're still coming in. I can see them still entering, so it's good that we're giving them a little buffer there.
Okay.
And if you click on the room tab, you can see the people as they're entering. You can see the attendees.
Okay.
But make sure you switch it back over to chat when it's time for question and answer period.
Okay.
You see what Joe said?
No, I can't see any of that.
Oh, because you're off. That's right. You're off the chat for now. Let them know that you can't see their chat until the end of the presentation.
Yeah, I'll see your chat at the end of the presentation.
So, Betty, just to let you know, Joe says, good evening. Great to hear your voice. Jean says, we're hearing all of this. Diana says, hello. I cannot hear or see anything. So, Diana, I hope you get that worked out.
Okay.
Zenab says, hi, Betty. I was in your LA Masters course attending from my bed in Germany. And Donnell says, hi, Betty. Linda Mayer says, hi, everyone. And Serena Davis says, greetings all. And Joe said, got it. We can hear both of you. So that's great. Everybody is on board, and a few people have logged in here. So I'd say maybe a couple more minutes and you can take it away and give us your fabulous intelligence to share with us.
Very good.
Eleanor says, hi, Betty. Great to be here. And Cynthia says, hi, Betty, in Puebla, Mexico. Puebla, Mexico.
Hello to Mexico.
And welcome to everybody. feel free to chime in. Betty won't be able to see your chat until she's done with the presentation, and then she'll take questions. Angela says, hi, Betty. So excited to connect with you through this webinar. Thea says, nice to hear you again, Betty. Abby says, hi, Betty. So we got quite a few people on board, and they're all logging in, and everybody's raising their hand, so to speak, and chiming in.
That's very
Nice
good.
Yeah.
This is a whole new medium for me. I'm used to being with people, embracing them, being able to see and touch and feel. And I'm learning a new medium for communicating. And I've been learning it with Jeffrey. This is Jeffrey Atherton.
Hi, everybody.
Who is I'm a coachee in this domain right now. And I'm like you, when you learn a new practice, a new way of being, or some new technology, it really takes becoming a beginner. And I must tell you, I am a beginner. And one of the things I'm learning again about language, because Jeffrey lives in Colorado. I live here in the in Northern California. And so everything that we're doing is happening through language, through communication, through conversations. And not only are we in a conversation with each other, we are also including this webinar in the conversation and including you in the conversation. And the power of technology today is that we have people from Mexico, we have people from all different parts of the United States. My sister, Joyce, some of you know Joyce, is downstairs in her office, and we're communicating. And we're communicating with language. And we're going to discover and explore tonight what is language, just a little, because it's a huge topic. It's a big topic. And it's a discourse, or with the philosophical understandings of language and languaging, which I've been studying since 1980, basically. And I'm just touching the power of what language is, and what language and how we live in language. Like our language is the house of being. Some of you have heard me say that many times. And language is the expression of our creative force. And our possibilities exist together in language. So what is language, and how do we participate together? Creating possibilities and constituting the world through speech acts, which is what we're going to talk about tonight. So welcome, everyone. And thank you for accepting our offer and our invitation to share approximately an hour together, speaking in conversation, again, about the very water we swim in, the air we breathe, and we call it language, and yet we're blinded to it quite often. It's hidden to us. And as I've studied and as I participated with language, I found that the people who can harness the capacity to speak and listen, because language is speaking and listening, become leaders, become inventors of the world, of the worlds we live in together. And they can learn the language of navigation and commitment. So this webinar is the start of a new adventure into the claim that's being made by many that language has to do with action, with the coordinating with others. And in this interpretation, language becomes generative and creative, versus how we often think of language as the transfer of information between people. That may be one aspect of language, but it's the smallest aspect of language. So again, working with me tonight, we have Jeffrey Atherton, Joyce Christie, my sister, and someone I've recently met who we are working closely with. When I say we, me and my team from the Ontological Living World, Kevin Perry, who is a top philosopher. He's completed his PhD, but I learned so much from Kevin. And so I thank him for being on this call. And welcome again to the oneandall.com webinar series. So let me tell you a little bit about One and All. One and All is a platform that Caroline Fuqua, some of you know Caroline, also known as Isis, Dr. Ray Blanchard, some of you know Ray, and right now Ray's brother passed yesterday, for those of you who know Ray. So he's at home with his family, and Isis is in, of all places, Egypt. She lives there quite often. And we decided about a year ago that we have many offers and talents that we wanted to share with a lot of people. And that if we combined our efforts and if we could coordinate together, that we could make a bigger contribution. And that's what we did. And I got to tell you, working with talented people, powerful people, people who already have a profound sense of themselves and their contribution, and people who travel a lot, took coordination. It took making requests. It took making promises. It took participating together in a way that we could produce something for people and for ourselves that could not be produced if we were separate. So the name One and All is oneandall.com. What we're up to is that as members of a family, 7 billion strong, it's our intention as One and All to connect as many of us as possible with the awareness that there is truly only one life, one breath that we all share. And the more we have that awareness that we're all sharing, something starts to happen. And this happens in language. It starts to happen that we can begin to participate together to let us discover the power and magnificence available to us as we explore topics that are designed to awaken our hearts, minds, so that we can think and feel our way to a more extraordinary experience of ourselves and each other. And if you've been listening to the news lately, or if you haven't, we're beginning to notice that something is happening on the entire planet. And a part of it, perhaps, I don't know, because I don't want to come here with, like I have answers. I want to come here to speak about language and how everything shows up in language. But a part of it comes from this separation that we live in, and that happens in language. So we're setting out on a venture to participate together. And I thank you again for being here on this adventure as we began to navigate the field of language. And as we navigate this field together, we began to invent new possibilities for us. We began to learn how we shape our results through and by language, and how language is shaping us. And then language becomes generative and creative. We will have tonight, you have an opportunity to go to the One and All webinar website to sign up to become a member. And when you sign up to become a member, there are a lot of free gifts that we have for you on an ongoing basis, or you can become a paid member. And all that's listed on our webinar. And at the end, our website. And at the end, we will offer you another proposal that's available to you. And with this proposal, we hope we can continue to explore this conversation together and explore it in such a way that it makes a tremendous, and I do mean a tremendous difference for you and the people you care about, and your families, your communities, and your work life, and your neighborhoods, wherever you are. So welcome. Again, now beginnings. The thought manifests as the word, and the word manifests as the deed. This is a Buddhist saying that I've used in my coaching course for many, many years. And what it's basically saying is something that many, many great teachers and philosophers, and even the quantum world, is now saying, that the thought manifests as the word. And as we think, so we become. So what is the thinking we are? And to remember that this thinking is happening in language. And I don't mean language like words, but languaging itself. In 1980, I met Dr. Fernando Flores, who is one of the thought leaders that distinguished language not only as a tool we use to describe a world that already exists, but rather as an action that produces a world and a future that would otherwise not have existed. Language is action. And as I continue to study with Dr. Flores, and I highly recommend his book, which we'll recommend to you at the end. As I continue to study with him, the implications of this body of work is staggering. This conversation of language shaping our world has been confirmed by many great thinkers and teachers: John Searle, John Austin, the Bible, Heidegger, quantum physics, and many, many other people who it would take too long to name here. But again, they're saying something. They're saying that language is constitutive, that language shapes. And then John Austin and John Searle looked at language and started to have a conversation about speech acts. And what are speech acts? And speech acts are, I know some of you are sick of this word, but they're distinctions. And as these distinctions, we began to speak in a way, and we become observers of our own listening and speaking so that we can have effective action take place. Anywhere you look in the world, and I do mean any place where action is occurring, there are 5 things that are happening. People are declaring, people are requesting, people are promising, people are asserting, and offers are being made. So an offer is similar to a promise. Now let me back up for 1 second. I must tell you, there's no way we're going to get through all these speech acts tonight. It's impossible. We'll give you a brief overview, and then we'll have an invitation for you to continue to study and to learn. Because again, I'd like to say, I believe it's some of the most important work that you could do for yourself. Not like work, but a new practice, an ontological practice in terms of observing you and observing what happens when we communicate. And just the word conversation itself, what does it mean? Converse, conversation, to come together. And it's in language that we come together. And it also makes us human. Language is what distinguishes us from the other animals on the planet, this kind of language. Some of you are familiar with the Helen Keller story. You remember she was a little girl and she couldn't speak and she couldn't hear. And she was like a wild woman, a wild little girl, but her family had tremendous belief and faith in her. And they brought in this woman to teach her sign language. And as Helen Keller tells the story, she said she didn't exist until she made a connection between language and what was occurring in the world. In the movie, which is an old movie, if you can remember, this woman took her hands and put it under the water. And she kept tapping in her hand, water, water, water. And in that moment when she got the correlation between water and language, the world opened up for her in a whole nother way. And I'm seeing the same thing, saying the same thing about these speech acts. Once we understand speech acts in this way, not like a theory, not like information, but as a way to navigate through the world, then we enhance our possibilities, and not only our own personal possibilities, but our social possibilities, which I'm beginning to find that all our possibilities are social anyway, because we do live together here on this tiny, tiny planet. So let's look at declarations first. You can see that. Make sure you have your pens and paper out. Let's see. So a declaration then is what opens up our possibilities. And a declaration becomes the context and from which you invent powerful requests, promises, assertions, which is actions. And declarations exist the moment they're spoken. Some of you have heard this many, many times, so stay with me. But in order for a declaration, a speaker declares a new world of possibility for action in a community of speakers against the background of shared practices. You're all familiar with the Declaration of Independence. Someone said, we declare that we are a free and independent nation. You're also familiar with the declaration of, I now pronounce you husband and wife. And in the moment of declaring that, of speaking it, it becomes a space of possibility. So required elements for a declaration: a person making a declaration has the authority to make the declaration. You don't have the authority to make every declaration. Neither do I. So who can declare war for the United States? Not even the president. It's required by Congress. Also, there are different kinds of declaration. There's a declaration of being, which if you've done some of the transformational trainings, experiential trainings, that's that world also. Who do you say you are? And you have the authority to speak who you are. And then some examples, again, of a declaration, and I want to make sure we get to all of them, so I'm moving rather quickly. But examples are, we will provide ethically sourced cotton to our customers. Someone said that. And in the moment they said it, they began to orient their actions and their requests and their promises towards having that be so. We're going to lay off 10% of the staff. Some of you may have heard that. Someone said that. And in the moment they said it, then it began to shape a field of possibilities. So what's produced through a declaration? Leadership in a new context for action that addresses the concerns of the community, that listens to the declaration and makes it effective. What's important here is that our declarations are made in a community of listeners. And when we can begin to listen, what's a declaration? A public declaration. And we began to move in that space. We'll call it a disclosive space. And we began to have more power, because everything said is said by someone, and every declaration that's made is made by someone. And then we navigate. We began to move in those declarations, and even in our own self-declarations. For example, if I say I am, let me think of something that I am. I was just speaking with Jeffrey before we got started, and I said, Jeffrey, I'm nervous. And he laughed. And I've stood in front of thousands and thousands of people, and yet I'm experiencing nervousness because this is a new domain for me. But in the moment that I said it, something else emerged for me, and I'll tell you about that when we get to assertions. So declarations. My request of you, and it is request. What's a declaration you made about yourself and forgot that you made, and now you're living it out? And if you got that you had the authority to declare about you and about your life, what new declaration would you make that now appears to be impossible because you said it's impossible? And what would that declaration be? Take a minute, a second here, and write something down. What declaration have you made about yourself that you forgot that you made? Be aware of it. Be present to it. And now, what's a new declaration that you can make, that you have the authority to make? And then make it. And when you have it, raise your hand. And Jeffrey, when you have some hands that are raised, let me know.
I will let you know, Betty. I'll tell you.
Okay.
So people, if you're raising your hands, just say I or put anything in the chat and I'll let Betty know. So far, the chat is mute.
Mute.
Ask that question again, Betty.
What's a declaration you made about yourself? A self-declaration that you made and forgot that you made it. And now you're living your life as if it's a permanent declaration.
Thea says I. So Thea raised her hand.
Okay.
Joellen has got mine.
So think about it.
Kevin says I can't count how many times I've declared I can't do this, or I can't think I can. I do think I can do this.
Yes.
Angela says I.
And begin to listen. And this is what happens in language too. We begin to listen ourselves in a mindful way, or listen to our conversation in a mindful way. Remember, the word and the deed go together. So what are you saying? And quite often we forget that we're saying it. And then when we get to assertions, we're going to see what assertions we make about other people and forget that we're making those assertions, and we live as if that's who a person is. So the next speech act is request. Now, a request, a speaker asks a listener or potential performer to take care of something that the speaker is concerned about, which requires action. And what's required in a request are conditions of satisfaction, a background or context of shared and obvious practices, and a specified time for fulfillment of the request. A few weeks ago, I was out to dinner with a very good friend of mine and his wife for her birthday, my sister's birthday, Henry and Cynthia, here in the Bay Area. And we were just speaking. And I said, something I've always wanted to do, something I want to do right now is I want to go see the Warriors play basketball. And Henry, who's a basketball fanatic, I should say, sports. This guy loves sports. He said, really? I said, yeah. He said, let me see what I can do. I hadn't really made a request, but at some moment, it sounded like a request in his listening, because he looked at me and said, I think I can get some tickets. You want to go? Sure, I want to go. He said, I'll call you and let you know. So 2 days later, he called me and we coordinated. It was on last Wednesday night. And those of you who know me know I'm very seldom home on a Wednesday night. And he had 3 tickets to go see the Warriors play. It happened like that. I was a speaker. There were conditions of satisfaction. Now, if I had walked down the streets of San Rafael and said, you know what, I want to go to a basketball game without a committed listener, nothing would have happened. But Henry is there. And then we went to the basketball game, and I got to tell you, it was the highlight of my 60-some years of living. Absolutely, absolutely spectacular. Now, that's a declaration and an assertion that it was powerful and wonderful. So another form of request, which is say, please clear time tomorrow afternoon to negotiate new terms for the contract. That's a request. You can also, my request is I have an invitation for us to go out to dinner together, which is a form of request. And all this is in Fernando's book, or you can do much research on it, because there are different kinds of requests. With every request, you can accept, decline, a counter offer. And we'll get to what the accept is, like a promise, here in a few minutes. But you can always do that. Henry did not have to speak up and say, I have tickets to the Warriors. 3 great tickets, by the way. But he did, because we were in a relatedness. It was the way we were related. We have a care for each other. And if your requests are not being fulfilled quite often, if they're not being fulfilled, then stop and ask yourself, what is my relatedness with this person? What are their concerns? What are my concerns? And also, if you're not making requests, what's stopping you? I found that in working in certain communities, especially communities where people don't have as much money sometimes, they fail to make requests. And there's a whole narrative behind that. But big requests evokes big promises. Small requests evoke small promises. It's like Jeffrey and I working together here. There was a request that we meet yesterday on his part. And then I requested that we meet again today. So we were requesting and promising, and nothing happened in terms of time until there was a promise for us to meet today at 3 o'clock, at 3:15. So what's produced? Expectations on the part of the speaker that some concern will be addressed. And there's a commitment. You're asking for a commitment for something, for some action to take place. So requests are not just words. It is language calling forth action. What's a request right now that you knew if you made it to someone in your life, that it could alter the course of your life as well as theirs? What's a request? And remember, a request has a committed speaker and a committed listener with conditions of satisfaction. There's a background or context of a sharedness, and there's a specific time for the fulfillment of the request. So take 30 seconds or a minute. What's a request? Right now, if you made it, it could alter your life and the lives of the people that you're making a request to, and knowing that people have the right to decline the request. Because if they don't, you leave them without dignity. And also remembering that because people decline a request, they're not saying they don't care about you. They're declining the request. So when you have a request, raise your hand.
I'm watching the chats, everybody, so go ahead and log into the chats and let us know. What is your request?
If there's a request to make to someone in your life that you haven't made, what is that request, if you have one? And we make these requests, we make requests every day. Will you drive the kids to school today? Will you ask Mary if she spoke to her client yet? Requests lead people to make promises to fulfill on them. And when promises are made and fulfilled, they build trust and it produces effective action. So again, the anatomy of a request, a speaker and a listener, a shared understanding of the request that's being made, a time by which the request must be fulfilled, and clear conditions of satisfaction. Will you marry me? That's a request. Yes. When? 2 years? Next year? 10 years? Or no, I'm not going to marry you. I decline the request.
So Betty, we have a request
Yes.
to my sister. It says, this is from Thea, to my sister. Will you come to visit if I buy your ticket? There's a request.
Oh, that's a request you're making to your sister?
That's Thea. Thea is making that request to her sister.
Oh, great. And now give her a timeline. And she can accept or decline. And
Thea
this is
Thea says yes. So she hears you, she gets you, and
Yes.
she's going to follow through with that, it sounds like.
very good. And the clearer you are with your request, and not all your psychological, I'm gonna call it assessments, the more effective you'll be.
Before the end of July, Thea says, is the timeline.
Okay,
That's what she's going to put in her request.
very good. And then, do you make requests that no one listens to or takes seriously? That's a question for you to listen to. And if not, I'm going to say it comes back to you, the requester. Do you make requests that empower others to be greater than they currently are? And this is what if action is not happening around you, begin to notice and pay attention to how you're requesting and what you're requesting. So now we're going to go to promises, which is, what is a promise? A speaker or performer promises to care for something that a listener or customer is concerned about. And the conditions of a promise are required elements of a promise, conditions of satisfaction, background or context of shared obvious practices, specific time for fulfillment of the promise. Pretty similar to, it's the other side of the request. And to promise not to do something is same as promising to do something. I want to say that again. So if I promise not to come to visit my sister, that's a promise not to, as well as a promise to. So we're always, we're promising, and quite often we live in the world in such a way that we forget what we're promising and how we are promising and what that's producing. And to make a promise is a profound act. Promises can make and break our reputations. They empower our businesses and our organization. And within each promise lies the possibility and vulnerability of trust and the hope or the commitment to fulfilling some action that's inventing or creating our lives together. So how do we manage our promises? And to ourselves and to other people. And we use integrity a lot around promising. But integrity is not about keeping all of our promises all the time. It is about what we say and do and how we be And when we break our promises, how do we recover our integrity and our trust with others? Because trust is at the heart of our building futures together. As we can see in our world right now, again, in our, people don't trust each other. And when there's no trust, or when trust, and as Fernando Flores is saying, when trust itself is being questioned, when there's no trust of trust, it makes it even more difficult for us to participate and engage together, to care, to get involved in each other's lives in the deepest ways, in the deepest way possible. So again, what are promises? What's a promise you have right now to yourself or to someone else that if you fulfilled on that promise, your life would be altered? Your future would be altered. Remember, we're not looking at the past. We're looking at our future possibilities together. You made a promise to be on this call. You didn't make it to me, and it wasn't, I must be there. Something in this offer you saw that spoke to you and addressed a concern that you have, and you said, okay, I'm making a promise to myself to be on this call. 5 o'clock Pacific Standard Time, Wednesday, March 23rd. And the moment you made that promise, time was invented. And then you brought your body, you brought your spirit, you brought you here out of a promise that you had made. If there had been no promise, it would have been a wish or a hope. And so a promise then produces a commitment to action. So what's a promise that you can make right now? A promise that you haven't been making that you could make that could alter your life. When they have one, Jeffrey, have them raise their hand. Jeffrey?
Yep, I'm watching, Betty. Nobody's
Okay.
chimed in yet with it. If you're having difficulty moving the link out of the way to the One and All website, just click the red down arrow. I've removed it anyway, so it shouldn't be an impediment anymore. Thea raised her hand. She's in.
Okay. Now don't go for the heavy promises. Just look at the little ones. Like when I finish this call, I have a promise to go to my Zumba class. And it's a standing promise 2 or 3 times a week. When I'm in town, I go to Zumba. I have promises on what time I'm going to get up in the morning. And it doesn't sound like I promise I'm going to get up at 6 o'clock in the morning and do my mindful meditation. But there's something in the way of speaking and in languaging my commitment that I get up and I do my meditation and go into Zumba. That's a promise to myself. Again, and being on this call tonight, doing this webinar 3 months ago as we were speaking about this, each one of us promised to do a webinar. Aziz did the very first one, which was great, on how to, the game of life and how to win it. The next one Joyce did, which had to do with NLP, neuro-linguistic programming. And then it was my turn. And of course, I tried to get out of it, but they wouldn't let me. And then the next one will be by Ray Blanchard. And I don't yet know the title. But that's how we coordinate. Those are our promises. And then
We've got a bunch more promises here. Let me share them with you.
Okay.
Diana says, I promise to myself to spend more time with myself. Angela raises her hand. Linda Mayer says, I promise myself to be healthier, exercise more. Cynthia says, I promise to meditate. Thea says, I promise to use Pilates to strengthen my core and back. And Simon just says, Betty, this is awesome.
Oh, now that's an assertion, which we're going to get to next. Now, the people who promised about taking care of myself, the more specific you are, the better your chances of fulfilling your promises. And put it in time. You got to put it in time. It could sound like I promised to go to work out. What's today? Wednesday, on Thursday, and what it is. But the more vague you are with your promises, I promise you probably won't fulfill on your promises. Remember, this is about effective action, and this is where power is in languaging, because we are beings of language. And unless you have a specific promise, there's an aspect of you that will just waffle around and not. And so then the promise becomes not to, which is a promise, versus the promise to act. Remember, the promises is a specific time for fulfillment of the promise. And when you promise, I'm going to go to the gym by Friday morning, 10 a.m., something starts to happen if you haven't got there. And I say, write down your promises in the beginning so that you're clear. Not like a hammer, but like a way to keep you focused. One of the things.
Here's a whole bunch more.
Okay.
So, you want me to share them with you?
Yes.
So Jody says that she promises to walk and go with her dog daily. Gingy says, I promise myself to jump rope every day for 30 days. Simon says, I promise myself to complete my business plan and the curriculum for a teen empowerment program by April 8th, 2016. Joellen says, I will investigate your concerns and get back to you with some solutions and possible answers by the end of next week. Linda says, I promise to do 10,000 steps 3 times a week for the next year. Cynthia says, I promise myself to meditate every day.
For how long?
Well, we don't know.
Okay. Because it could be a minute. It could be 10 minutes.
So Cynthia, how long are you going to meditate each day? So we got a lot of good details in there, like 10,000 steps 3 times a day, a week for the next year, things like that. That's good. I'm gonna the empowerment program by April 8th, 2016. Yes. Yep.
And see, then what happens is you begin to shape you through your promises. Promises. If you don't have a promise, it's pablum. Meaning it'll happen when it happens. And again, I want you to remember that is not like carved in stone, but in your promises, sis, pulls you into action. And it pulls you into action in the direction of what you're committed to out of the declarations that you are and the declarations that you are with other people. Very powerful. So promises made and fulfilled will build your own self-trust and your confidence. I was in a 2-year program studying, and we call it the Dwelling Program with Fernando Flores. And when I first signed up, I said, oh, let me go and see how it works out. And I will, many of you know this conversation, if the conditions are right, I'll be on the calls, I'll be at the weekends. And then at one moment I said, no, I'm promising to be on calls with my team members. And it reshaped not only my participation, but it reshaped what I was committed to in participating. So it wasn't if this is right or if the conditions are right, if I have the time, then I'll go do this. It became, this is my commitment. And your commitments shape you. So these speech acts are constitutive, meaning they shape. They shape you, they shape your world, and they shape your world with other people because we share a world together. We are social and linguistic beings. Let me say, Jeffrey, I just did something that I didn't want to do.
Yes, you did. Go up to slideshow.
Okay.
And this time, don't click play from start. Say play from current slide.
Okay. Jeffrey's so brilliant. Thank you, Jeffrey.
Bless you, Betty. Thank you.
Now, so when I just said Jeffrey's so brilliant, that was an assessment, which we're going to get to now. So we got
the truth.
No, it's not the truth. It was me saying something about you out of my participation with you. Okay. So that's a whole nother conversation. And I'm going to talk to you about Kevin in a little bit here, because we've talked about this. And I believe this is some of the greatest, I don't want to call it technology, but I will, because I don't have another way to describe it. But some of the greatest technology that a person can learn to give them freedom, for them to begin to cultivate how they can navigate their lives with other people in such a way that they can build powerful, and I didn't mean powerful, realities together. This is what this body of work makes possible. So promises, let me see. What's an offer? If you are not succeeding in your business, I'm going to say it's because you don't have powerful offers. And this is something we do a lot of work with around how to make an offer. A speaker or performer offers to take care of something.
Betty, could you push your unmute button on your microphone, please? I think that was my bad. Betty, can you hear me? Well, everybody, we have some technical difficulties here. I'm sure you can hear me. Betty's mic has been muted, and we're working to get it unmuted, and we'll pick up where she left off as soon as we get that taken care of. Betty, there is a button at the top of your screen, a little microphone that is probably red. And if you could just click it, you may need to reduce or stop screen sharing for a minute, or stop your PowerPoint to see it, so you can see that button up there.
Can you hear me now?
There she is. Yes, yes. Sorry about
Okay.
that, everyone. We have her back. Now, if you could bring that PowerPoint back up and the slide share back up, we'll be all set.
Okay, so I gotta go to,
Yeah,
we
just go
practice
to
this.
the little green button off on the left to screen share.
Uh-huh, share.
Yeah.
Okay, PowerPoint. Did I do it?
You are amazing. You are the most amazing.
I did it. I got it.
Yeah, you rock and roll, girl. Rock
Yeah,
and roll.
we rock. Okay.
Okay, you're on. I'm on.
I'm on. Okay, assessments. Let's look at assertions first. And remember, we are declaring, we're promising, we're requesting, we're making offers, and we're talking about offers like, so I go to McDonald's for fast food, and it takes them 30 minutes to prepare my food. They're not living the offer that they're making, because one of their offers is in and out. And if I go to, let's say, a Mexican restaurant and they're serving Chinese food, their offer is off. So it's our offer. What offer are you in your business, especially if you are a coach, if you are a trainer, if you're an entrepreneur, in whatever domain you're in, and what's your offer? Be clear on what your offer is. And if you're not clear on your offer, I'm going to suggest that your clients or the people you want to attract will be confused. And when people are confused, they don't act. Be like the same thing. You can talk about somebody. If I said, will you marry me? So marriage is also an offer. What offer am I? That someone would say yes. Or what offer is he being that I would even make that request? So it's in this domain of offers that you begin to have more say so in your life. What is your offer? And you cannot be everything to everyone. That's not an offer. And so an offer addresses some concern, especially in the workplace, in the marketplace. And it's a commitment to a new future and to action on parts of both parties. So what's your offer? I was just recently at a meeting down in San Diego, and a person was talking about this, and he said how he's come up with his offer and how he speaks into it is that he's listening for what's needed in this particular domain. And he's listening for it so that he can make an offer to address the concerns of the people in this particular domain. And he said when he learned that and began to participate that way and stop trying to be everything for everyone, that his business increased in such a wonderful and magnificent way. So find out what offer you can be to the people that you want to serve and be very clear about it. Don't guess. Begin to ask questions. What do you care about? What means the most to you in your life? What breakdown or what problem needs to be addressed right now? So we can take a look at education. There are many breakdowns in education. If you're in education, what offer can you be to address some of the concerns that we're having in education? If you are, so again, I'm gonna move a little bit faster because I told you for an hour. But again, this is a powerful piece that you can learn and address in your own life in terms of offers. Assessments. I think that's the next one. Assessments. We're always assessing. We're never, and assessments aren't bad, but what assessments do is they determine our actions. A speaker assesses how some action or thing relates to specific concerns or commitments. Now, what happens quite often is we forget that there are our assessments. They're not the truth, as I would say. And they come out of assessments are evaluations, judgments, or opinion about the world that we're living in together. So they're not necessarily They do. They shape our actions together. And they are claims made by the speaker, but unlike assertions, they cannot be verified by witnesses. My candidate is the best qualified. That's an assessment I'm making. Or like I said to Jeffrey, you're amazing. That's an assessment on my part out of some action that he's making. And it's not a fact. I'm saying that. Someone else could have an entirely different assessment. Once you learn about assessments and assertions and how to ground assessments, again, you begin to have more peace in your life, and the people in your life will begin to have more peace around you. Assessments, once you have an assessment about someone, like say if I assess that I can't trust Jeffrey, then I'm going to show up in a particular way to be right about my assessment. It's not the truth, but that's my assessment. So I need to know how to ground my assessment. So a grounded assessment is an assessment accompanied by a list of assertions that support the assessment. And if you can ground the assessment, then you begin to have possibility for effective action. As long as you cannot ground the assessment, then your possibilities for assessment actions are limited. And one of the things we do in our work together is we work with you on how to ground your assessments. And this is a way of listening and participating, and it is a practice. So now what's an assessment you have about yourself? You're going to do this quickly. Negative or positive, because they close possibilities and they open possibilities. But you forget that that's what's happening, and you start to live as if the assessment is the truth. Quickly, write down one assessment you have about yourself. What's an assessment you have about yourself that's come out of some action that you've observed? And you said, this is who this person is. This is who I am.
Feel free to offer your assessment about yourself in the chat, and I'll read it off to Betty in the group if you want to own that assessment for the rest of us.
It could be a positive or negative. They both do the same thing. They open and close possibilities.
We have an assessment from Eleanor. Her assessment is, I am generous.
Okay.
Eric says we're talking about offer. Oh, that was a while back. Gingy says, I am meant for great things. Diana says, I am a committed woman. Thea says, I am a powerful, joyful, giving woman.
Okay, now that's more of a declaration than an assessment, let's say. But again, we don't have time to go into all of this to make all these distinctions, and they're so powerful because a declaration.
How about this one? Thea says, I'm a procrastinator. Is that an assessment?
That's an assessment.
Yeah.
That's an assessment. And you've collected evidence now to be right about that. Yes. But let's see. So you see how having these distinctions, with these distinctions, you become different navigators with your in the world, and you navigate differently with people. And you can say, okay, this is an assessment I'm making about you. Let me ground it. And when you are making powerful and grounded assessments, your effectiveness will go up. And your moods will shift, and the moods of the people around you will shift. But that's a whole nother conversation, talking about moods. So again, begin to notice, is my assessment grounded? I'm a procrastinator, like an assessment. What's having you assess yourself that way? What are the actions you're taking or not taking? What are the promises that you're making or not making? It might be that you're not making you're not promising in a way that will pull you out of your procrastination. That because promises do that. Promises pull you into your future when you become one with your promise. So we're going to go to the next piece here because I promised you to get you off of this line and not keep you all night. And
Betty, Shane has a quick question for you. I wanted to offer in. Shane is saying declaration comes from no evidence. Assessment comes from evidence, correct? He's asking.
Yes. Yes. Assertions and assessments have evidence. And when you ground an assessment, you look for the evidence. So it's like, this happens quite often with kids, especially negative assessments. A kid will get let's say maybe they get a C in math in school. And then they start to live in a negative assessment called, I can't learn. I'm not a good learner. But when you can ground it and say, I don't learn math well, it's a whole different conversation. And rather than assessing your whole beingness as not learning, because it's not. So I got a C in math. So once you ground the assessment, then you can say, now what action can I take? What promises can I make to learn math if that's something that I care about? I could be very good in learning music and in English, but because I get a C in math, I might say, and cloud my whole way of being of not being a good learner because I got a C in math. And that's the power of grounding your assessment so you can take effective action. And we have assertions here. Assertions, again, requires, once you make an assertion, it requires that you provide evidence to your speakers to support your assertion. Or you begin to lose trust with your community. It'll be like if I'm sitting here and I look outside and I say it's raining, I'm asserting that it's raining. And then you come and look and you go, it's not raining, Betty, because I don't see any water. You begin to question me. Okay, what's happening over there? So again, this is a whole nother body of work. All of this together will have you be even more effective. Let's see. I'm going to tell you about ontological living, what it is, and what we produce, what we focus on. And we focus on producing value rather than finding value in the world. We're saying that we are creators of value and that the world, what we call the world, like a space, is where we, in language, began to have our commitments, communicate our commitments, coordinate our actions and our lives with others. And we actively fulfill our concerns rather than waiting for fulfillment. And we author our lives as transformative creators in language. And through the power of the word, we create our reality. And we do all of this by embodying and understanding what we do with language as historical, linguistic, and I'm going to say biological beings, because we exist as a biology as well. And the ontological approach gets to the heart of what matters, which is building community and communing with oneself and others through conversation and mindfulness. This is consistent with any practice, religion, or transformative approach, but it gets to the heart of the matter. We get to the structures of language that determine our human being. And what separates us from other animals on the planet is this capacity and this ability to communicate through language, to speak and listen, to speak and listen, and let our language together shape us as beings, as communities, as cultures, and in terms of what's possible, because it's in language that we say what's possible as well as what's not possible. I thank you for being here. And if you had, and we'll take time for 1 or 2 questions for those of you who don't mind. And then I'll tell you about our offer, a couple of offers we have. So anyone with a question, Jeffrey?
Yeah, I'm watching. It's yeah, I assert we're running out of time. I commit to be on this call for 1 hour. I'm signing off now. So some people, fantastic. Thank you. And yeah, so if you, Betty, if you'll stop your screen share after you leave your links up there so people can jot them down, and stop your screen share so that you can see the questions as they come up. We might be able to have a few minutes of dialogue with the people that can hang back a little more. I realize we've gone over a little bit from what people had committed to.
Yes. And also, I'll just say for anybody who's leaving, if you're interested in more of this conversation, make sure you get in touch with us. We are planning in the summer to do a 4-week course around online in this around this conversation, which will be very powerful. And if you're a member of our One and All, you get a big discounted price, and we'll send this out so that you can know it. And Kevin and I will be doing this together, Kevin Perry, and we highly, highly recommend it and want to play with you as we invent and evolve this conversation together with you. So you said get rid of my.
Yes, so stop your screen share so you can see some of the questions that are coming in.
Oh, great. I see them. Okay. Thank you, Cynthia. What would you recommend as a response if someone is making negative assessments that are ungrounded? Find a way to get them grounded. You've got to locate where it is, and it's not in psychology. It's noticing, just like the example I gave when someone says, I don't learn. I'm not a good learner. Everybody learns. What it is to be a human being is that we learn, but at some moment in time, something happened where we stopped learning, or someone made an assessment about how we learn, and we took it and it became our whole lives around learning. Okay. Thank you. Thank all of you. Did I get them all, Jeffrey, or are there some more?
No, yes, I think you did, Betty. The others were just stating that they were running out of time and had to run. Other people are just kind of thanking you now and saying it was a pleasure. And I want to assert that if anybody is interested in finding out more about One and All, there isn't a link to join or at least find out more. If you click under the offers button, you'll see the link, and you can go to the website and check out and see what the different memberships are. There's a free level, and then there's a premium level, and they're divided basically just by the content that's available to you.
Thank you very much. Thank all of you. And please come back to another webinar. Like I said, Ray will be doing one next month, I believe. And also check out my ontological living website. And you will find on my ontological living website offers about learning to be a transformational trainer, as well as our coaching program, our 9-month coaching certification program, and also our next offer in this particular domain around language. Jeffrey, thank you. It's been wonderful.
Betty, there's one more question from Gingy I wanted you to direct you to. If you look down about 6 or 7 questions, my distinction between assertion and assessment is that an assertion can be measured by a metric, while an assessment cannot.
Exactly.
Right.
Yes. Very good.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, they asked for feedback on that statement there. That was more of a statement they wanted to hear, and so maybe that's something for another another
No.
webinar, another statement.
Yeah, assessments tend to be more with the meaning that we're bringing. And it's not objective observation. It's something that we're saying. But you're right. You got it. You nailed it. And assessments, you don't want to get rid of all assessments. So that's what I say. So the mark of a great leader or someone who's inventing their life is that they can discern which assessments are useful and which ones are not. And assessments are always made by an observer. And knowing who you are as an observer makes you more powerful. And knowing that assessments are born of thought and feeling and mood is critical.
Well, the
Thanks.
fact that most of the people that started this webinar are still in the room with us says something about your power to engage and to magnetize people. So I think that's pretty impressive that they're all still hanging on, wanting to hear the discussion, and evidently maybe they're thinking of some last minute questions to ask you. But I don't know how long you can hang on the webinar, Betty.
I have a promise to be at Zuma by 6:30.
All right, there it is. Then we're going to close it out, folks. And you can always you can contact Betty through One and All, through the contact form. And you can find her there. You can find her blog articles, a lot of information, her videos. There's just so much, a wealth of information on the One and All website. So check it out and see what you think. And thanks for joining us, Betty. Once again, thank you so much. You are a blessing and an inspiration, and just you are your own encyclopedia. Thank you for being here for us.
Well, thank you. I thank you for those wonderful assessments, and I'll accept them.
Thank you all. Good night, and we'll see you on the next One and All webinar. Take care.